Welcome to the BXG Podcast, the podcast where pop culture and nerd culture meet.
You think it's just going to be barbecue sauce?
Because if you actually read those books, it's just gobbledygook.
I really think clothes should be mandatory.
Speaking of Star Wars,
Captain America.
trailer reaction video. It's time to talk about The Last of Us. Episode 3.
Oh, gnarly sound.
What was the clickers?
I know, but it's just like the way it
Obviously.
comes through is so crazy sounding.
Yeah.
When you're not seeing anything and you're just hearing it, that
Yeah.
does some things to you.
Yeah, sure. Episode
Jeebies.
3. Episode 3. Billstown. Welcome to Billstown, I believe is the actual name of the episode.
Isn't it like long, long time or something, I thought?
Oh, you know what? I think just the description of it was Welcome to Billstown.
Long.
Billstown.
Oh, I thought it was a long time.
Uh-oh. We're not prepared.
Because that's the song they play, is the Linda Ronstadt song.
Oh, yeah.
That was the name of the...
She probably woke up and saw her Spotify stream, was like, what? Is she alive? I don't know. She could be dead. I have no idea. Okay.
You know what? It is called Long, Long Time. I'm right. I'm good. Yep.
Okay.
That third episode title, Long, Long Time. Good. Because it'll say it's the song that they play.
Whoops. Yeah, long time. I apologize.
That happens. Still alive. She's 76.
Yeah. She checked her royalties and was like, why is everybody listening to my song? So the episode starts with Ellie and Joel traipsing through the I had some notes here that I want to make sure I brought up. Not on this page. I just have notebooks just around. Here it is. So they're kind of walking, they're I think 10 miles outside of Boston or so, and This is after the state house that they got away, and they're okay. And there's a scene in a store. Joel's trying to find some of his stuff. Ellie's kind of snooping around. We won't get into spoilers yet. And then as they're walking, she asks how the virus started, and he kind of explains that. And again, we'll get into that when we get after spoilers. And then we're transported back in time 20 years to Bill, played by Nick Offerman, and kind of how the end of the outbreak day goes for him, and what the next 20 years looks like with his companion Frank until Joel and Ellie slide through Bill's town. And so, without too heavy spoilers, what were your thoughts on this episode?
Okay. So I will say initially when I watched this episode, it's a long episode.
It was a little bit longer. Episode. I think it was like a minute or an hour and 15,
something like that. So it felt a little long at first. It felt like a lot of backstory, and then obviously like the relationship there. And I will say, like, initially, I was like, is this a little corny? I was thinking this a little bit. Like, is this kind of the idea of we just have this relationship to kind of break away from everything else that's going on? Because this was an episode where, like, nothing else except what is happening in this house is happening.
Hour and 15 without credits. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, that's okay. And then I woke up this morning, I thought about the show a little bit more. And it's good to, like, in a way, like, you want to immediately react to things sometimes, but sometimes it's good to sit on it And I sat on it, and I got to school today, and I'm just kind of randomly thinking about it. And then I thought about it more. I thought about the song being played, and I thought about the music and how important that was in this episode. I think music is really important in this show to begin with. And I really like that too, when music plays, or especially when it's sneaky. I really like that. And so then I thought about it more. And the name of this episode is the Linda Ronstadt song we mentioned. And I was like, oh, okay, so this episode ends up actually being really, really good because of all of that. And the other thing I'll say is, like, I immediately got done watching football, and then going into this, so I'm always just in a mood, whether it's good or bad, you're just kind of in that mood that dictates how you feel. But then I stepped away from it and I thought about it. And two things really came out to me about this episode is, number one, Nick Offerman can be Ron Swanson in kind of any way, and it still works, because he is kind of Ron Swanson in this episode. And Murray Bartlett, where was he forever? Because he was in the White Lotus season 1, and he's in this, and he's just so good. And that really struck me as this, these people that kind of like overnight sensations who've been working for 20 years in the business.
Yeah.
And then I also just like this idea that when the leads of any show are not the leads of an episode, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And this is one where it really, really worked. And it shows that this show, or, we'll talk about the video game later, but it shows that this show doesn't need to have its leads to still have an impact and still progress. Because sometimes these kind of shows do this and the show didn't progress. But I think this show still progressed. And I saw people today say, not only was this the best episode of this season, but this might be the best episode of television that happens this year. It's just because it was so, I saw somebody say it was a perfect television episode. Bar none, just a 10 out of 10 perfect television episode. I don't necessarily want to go that far. It was very, very good. I will definitely say it was very, very good. I don't know if it's perfect. I don't know what a perfect episode of television is, other than maybe, I would say, a Seinfeld. There's probably Seinfeld episodes out there that I think are perfect, but that's just because I love that show, and maybe other people don't necessarily agree with that. This was the best episode of television that I can think of in the writing and the nuance that I've seen probably since the last season of Succession. And I mentioned this to you about Succession is still happening, so this year, so we could have a competition, but that's it. So I just thought this episode was really constructed well. It shows what you can do when you don't have a lead. And then when we get into the spoilers, we can get into that. But the one thing for me is, like, not playing the game, and I tried not to read things about the game because I want to hear it from you first.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think of this episode, number one?
This episode was, I didn't necessarily know how to handle this episode from the point of view of having played the game, understanding what Bill's town is like in the game versus the depiction of it here, the character of Bill, the character of Frank. Frank is not in the game. Frank, and this is spoilers for a 10-year-old video game. Frank and Bill are alluded to being partners. There's some other signs that I'm going to get into when we get into the spoilers, that Bill is a gay man, and you eventually come across Frank and you find his corpse. And it's like heavily implied that they were in a relationship, but in addition to that, how their ending is versus what happens in the episode is very different. This was the biggest departure from the game. This was, I would say, the character of Bill is relatively the same how he kind of operates within this sort of small town is the same. The end of the episode with Joel and Ellie is the same. And after that, that's kind of where the similarities end. And so it was interesting. I always watch the inside of the episode, 5 minute or so featurette afterwards. And Neil Druckmann, who was one of the creators and directors on the first game, had said, when we look at different aspects of the story, do we look at it and say, okay, these changes are either going to make it worse or make it be about the same, or will they make them better? And if it was worse or about the same, they didn't make any changes. And if it was better, then they made changes. And this was one of the areas that they made changes. And I think that the more I watched it, and then the end, I think it was more meaningful to tell Bill's story this way rather than the way that it was told in the game, because it shows that after 20 years of post-apocalyptic mayhem, that it is still possible to love and to have a meaningful relationship and to have a life, basically. And I think that, and I've said this many times, that this is not a fun world to be in. Playing the games aren't necessarily fun. They're very engaging. They're extremely engaging. Their presentation's off the charts, but it's not like, it's not like zany or anything, like Crash Bandicoot, or even like, the Uncharted games all end kind of happy. And like Nathan Drake's a mass murderer, and I've kind of talked about that. But I think that those games all have those moments where, okay, I'm having fun now because of blah, 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 blah. And like playing The Last of Us, it's very engaging. It can be very satisfying, but at the same time, it's also like you're kind of miserable during it because the world just fucking sucks. It's like if anything like this ever happens, Jesus, man, it's going to be awful. Whether it be the Yellowstone super volcano or nuclear destruction or some incurable virus like this. And if we get to the point where we're in post-apocalyptic wasteland, then forget about it. It's curtains, and I think that going in this direction kind of shows that this is, as Joel progresses with Ellie, this is what you're fighting for, is this type of like trying to regain some semblance of this type of life, even though it's 20 years later.
Right.
And so I thought that the changes were, and I'll tell you what, I had a great time on Twitter today, just reading the homophobia.
Oh, wow.
Incredible.
I didn't know that was, I mean,
my
I should have
God.
expected that.
Oh yeah. You should have expected
go
it.
back. I'll go
It
back.
It was incredible. Some of the things that I read. I wish I could. I don't want to steal a segment from a podcast that we just appeared on that we should have talked about that at the top, but maybe we'll definitely talk about it at the end, but we'll work it in there. But I wish I could read some of them, because holy shit, hilarity. Just absolutely like just really, really funny to me. But
sure.
But I didn't know, like going in, I was like, okay, I knew that they were going to I knew that Frank was going to be a character. And I didn't know how I felt about that. And I knew that they were going to play on this backstory. I didn't know that it was going to be an entire episode. But to an extent, I'm kind of happy that it was, because I do think that it's like important to show. I think if it just was following Joel and Ellie, which when you're in a game, you're kind of constricted to that. where it's okay, Joel's the protagonist and he's got this kid following him around that can help you every now and again. It's really hard to deviate from that. But when you're in a television series, and this is why another reason why I think television works better for adapting a 15-hour game than trying to fit everything into a 2-hour movie, is because now you have the ability to kind of open up and breathe and explore some of these characters in more meaningful ways. And you get that from this episode. And I thought, like I said, I thought it was exceptionally powerful. The story that was told, and like you said, all the nuance and the themes and everything that were kind of tied into it. But I want to get into spoilers.
Let's do it.
But before we get into spoilers, we're excited to announce that we have inked some deals.
Yeah.
With some of our local affiliates here, have purchased some ad time with us. So this is probably going to be something that happens a little bit more often on the BXG. Now we're hitting the big time. We're going to pay those bills, Greg.
Let's do it.
And this episode and this review of The Last of Us is brought to you by Acorns. Like many nuts, acorn oil is a good source of essential fatty acids. Your body can't make essential fatty acids, so you have to get them from foods and drinks. They're important parts of the membrane that surrounds your cells. They also have many important functions, such as storing energy. For more information, see your local squirrel. Spoilers.
I always visit my local squirrel as much as possible.
Right.
Stage advice. Spoilers.
I think
you should start with this because like the video game comparison to this is such a thing.
Right. And I think the one thing that really kicked it off for me was, or to get into, like we said, spoilers. I should get like hang on. I got something here. This will do.
Breaking news.
Yeah. I'll get something better. I just can't think of anything right now. Spoilers. The first part of the episode where Joel and Ellie are walking along and she asks him how the virus spread. If it spreads through biting, then who was the first person to get bitten and by what? And Joel explains to her that there was an infected with cordyceps crop of grain, and it was mass produced into flour, and it was contaminated, and it went into bread, cereal. And then he mentions pancake mix, which is a callback to the first episode where repeatedly Sarah says, I'm going to make you pancakes for your breakfast, and then just never does. And so that's like a tip that had she made those pancakes, it's likely that they would have been infected as well. But then it goes out to everywhere throughout the world because, the United States is a very big, or I don't know that he mentioned a specific where the contaminated crop came from, but it was contaminated and it was shipped all over the world. And then people who ate Thursday night, they would have started eating these things. By Friday, they were infected. Friday, September 26, 2003 is when everything went down. By Sunday, it was over. The world was over, basically. And so really interesting insight. That's not something that they really touch on, at least in my direct memory during the game. And I just played through the opening couple chapters. You can catch that on our YouTube channel. I'm playing I'm playing the game with the episodes as the episodes now release. So I'll have episode 3, Billstown, sometime later in this week. I literally just when we started finally posted episode 2 because I was having some issues with it, but that's not.
Are you Twitch doing these as well?
No, I'm just pre-recording it.
Okay.
And then editing it.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh shoot, I left my water over there. Oh well. So that's not really in the game. That fucked me up. And I texted you, I was like, well, I'm never eating grain again. I mean, and like you said, you said I'll bet my whole existence that that's not true.
Yeah.
I mean, I ate cereal the next morning.
Right.
But it was like,
I think I was eating cereal while that line was being said.
I was like, how? And this is the thing. There's like one thing, and there's one in every episode. My mic got okay. There's one thing in every episode that just makes this all the more scary. And that's the thing. It was like the funny thing about like the whole like boring and what did I say? The person said it was boring and formulaic. Boring and formulaic. Yeah. And I'm like, man, you're not paying attention to the nuance then.
Yeah.
Because there's something in every episode so far that it's just like, this could happen. Like the science is there. Like this could be a thing. And it's just terrifying. And like, that's the thing is like, there's jump scares, whatever, you know, the clickers and the infected and the runners to a degree are scary. And there's going to be people who are scary and jump scares and things like that. But that's not, and I always say like, I can't do scary stuff, right? I can't do like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I'll never play a Resident Evil game as long as I live. But it's because of like the jump scare type stuff that I don't like that. And this is lighter on that and more on the existential dread. This is why I say like Ex Machina is the scariest movie ever to me. Because of the possibility of something like that happening. And it's like they're like leaving these breadcrumbs of, well, this is plausible.
Don't eat those breadcrumbs.
They're leaving these things out. And
now that I know you have that, get ready.
What's that?
Now that I know you have the drum rolls or the whatever, what is that called? I believe you're
the badum-ching.
The badum-ching, but there's a name for that. I'm at the ready.
Right.
Well, doing all kinds of cocaine to be ready for this.
Well, we'll see how the next one of your jokes goes off. So it's really scary to me, that part.
Well, realistic is always scarier than like
the fantastic.
That's the thing. It's just fantastic. So that's the thing. Like I can understand where like Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a scary movie because that could actually happen.
Well, it did happen, right?
Right, it did actually happen. At least so it actually happened.
Based on,
and it's based off of that. But it's like obviously, other things are just so outlandish they can't happen. This is the thing where like, yes, it was passed through, and it's not to say it would be this extent, but it could be a thing that like if it's bacteria,
right,
like E. coli is always a thing,
right,
that gets passed through, and then like if people eat it, and then boom, we lose. I mean,
right,
not somewhere, but like COVID was a very light version of this.
Yeah,
I know COVID obviously was destructive, but
right. But not
wasn't the end of the world.
It wasn't apocalyptic. Yeah. So there was that. Frank and Bill. First of all, I love this little Easter egg. And it's only an Easter egg that you would know if you've played the game, obviously. But at the beginning, that's how I meant to intro you too. And not, we might have to redo the intro. Because I was going to introduce you as one of these New World Order jackboot motherfuckers or whatever he says.
I am.
And when he's like down in his bunker, and it's just showing everything, and like he has these like survival manuals on the wall. Okay,
so good.
It very clearly points one of them out, and it's guns and ammo.
Hell yeah!
Did you happen to catch that or no?
No, I did not catch
Okay,
that.
well, that's an Easter egg from the game. That's actually a gay porno mag.
Hell yeah.
Because
I like that.
in that section, Ellie picks up like some of his stuff. And then at the end of the episode where they're riding
That's
away,
awesome.
she's like in the back of the truck, like sleeping, and she's like going through these magazines, and she's like, check out this guy or something, it'll be in episode 3 of my playthrough, but like, it's like, check out this guy, look at that thing. He's like, where'd you get that? And he's like, I stole it from Bill. Why are all the pages stuck together? And it's just like a brief moment of levity. And so to see that callback in the episode of Guns and Ammo, because it's not about it's neither guns nor ammo, I can assure you that.
Well,
but
that's how you look at it.
So there's that. But the end of the episode is what was, well, towards the end, not the end, but the end of the episode was what was really moving, where Frank is sick and they've spent this life, basically. They've grown old together. They were a partnership, couple, whatever you want to call it, for 17 years, because I think it was 3 years after the fact that Frank showed up. And he's sick. He's got some terminal, I don't know that they say for sure. He says something about an MRI, like a portable MRI machine or whatever, the door-to-door MRI salesman coming to their town. It's a very Anytown USA vibe too, is the other thing that I liked about this. And the game has that as well. But I think that I think the end was really like, you could, like, initially you would look at it as tragic, but I think in the end, the fact that Frank and Bill mutually decide, Bill decides along with Frank. Frank's like, okay, I'm really sick. I'm not going to get any better. I've lived the life with you that I want to live. And so now I want you to euthanize me, basically. And then Bill makes the decision after their day of, they get married, they have the same dinner that they had on the first night that they met. They have these moments, they share these moments, and then they commit suicide together. But I think that given the world that they live in and what they have experienced to that point, I don't think that it's tragic at all. Actually, I actually think that it was quite a happy ending for the two of them. And so when Joel and Ellie come through and find the note, Bill's note, that says, like, to whoever finds this, but probably Joel. And that was kind of the thing that I will say was missing a little bit from this Nick Offerman's Bill, is that it was there a little bit, but he in the game, he's a very, very sarcastic prick. And it's just stuff like that. And that's the one thing that I think that making the decision to change this part of the story to be more reflective of the Bill and the Frank character versus seeing how all that played out with Joel, Ellie, and Bill, is that in the game, Ellie and Bill, from the moment they lay eyes on each other, can't stand each other. Like, she's a shithead teenager. He's this, like, overbearing, kind of sarcastic dickhead. And having their interactions kind of helps wear down Joel's walls a little bit towards Ellie. So I do think that is lacking a little bit by making this narrative choice. But at the end, I think that it was almost like it served the story overall better than having it been the way it would have, I think. And so it was really, like I said, I thought it was a happy ending. The last thing Well, what did you think? What did you think about like the relationship and the ending? And
I thought of this as the exact opposite ending with the same ending. It sounds weird to say, of Romeo and Juliet.
Sure.
Where they end dying together, but it's of woe. And for never was a story more woe of Romeo and Juliet. But for a
other
story
than
of
Princess Padme's,
for a
and
story
Revenge of the
of
Sith, who
more
just dies of sadness.
for
Sorry.
a story of more wow than Frank and Bill, because it's amazing they made it through. So that's how I looked at it. It's that going out together.
Yeah.
But in Romeo and Juliet, it was of sadness. It was because there was forbidden love.
Sure.
Romeo and Juliet, top 4 Shakespeare play. Top 4.
Top 4.
Top 4.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
We'll do our Shakespeare play rankings.
Yeah, that's
at some
on
point. Yeah,
it's in a different.
I can't reveal my number 1. My number 1, I got scolded for by someone at the bookstore because she's like, you're a terrible person. But it didn't make me. No, it's because it's not a simpleton. It is because it's so dark. But they're like darkness. But it made me think of Shakespeare. Now that I really look
well,
back,
there was even a reference to that, I think.
There was a reference, yeah. And so it's that thing where there can only be 7 stories ever told, and Shakespeare did all of them many times over. But this was one of those times where someone did it exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, in the moment, I wasn't sure. But like I said, sometimes you just need to like think about it. Now, Mad Men is my favorite serious show of all time, and there's the Carousel episode, which is to me still the best serious episode of television ever made, and I don't know if anything will ever beat that. I mean, it just hits a certain thing, but this is one of those episodes that does everything basically right and hit those notes to do those things right and to not be the main characters.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is so important because Don Draper makes the speech in the Carousel episode, but the main characters don't make anything, a poignancy in this. This is all these two, and I think that's really cool. I did not see this coming. I think that was another thing too, where you just don't see this being an episode of like not the main characters, and then and I used to do this. I wish I had more time. We talked about time before. I wish I had more time because Mad Men, I always watched it twice.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I just didn't care. I would just be like, I'm watching it, and I would watch it right afterwards. I just did that. Because I liked it so much, and it, and this is a show that I should probably do that. I do think now this show is the front runner for best television show. I mean, it's always hard to say everything because you have other things that are different. But Succession, like I mentioned, has come on. But Succession is going to have to do some things.
I don't like. I've really never watched that, and I know that I should, and I should probably. There's how many seasons so far? 3, 4.
3 of the 4th season starts in March. Yeah.
In March, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know that, but I just feel like just feel like things are going to be. It's going to be very, very difficult knowing this story the way that I know it, and seeing already what Pedro Pascal, Bella Ramsey, Nick Offerman, Anna Torv, Neil Druckmann, the other guy who directs it, I can't think of his name. It's the dude from Chernobyl. It's just, I don't have it at the moment, but seeing what they've done with 3 episodes and knowing what's left to come and
so we're 5 episodes more, right, Brandon?
6. There's 9.
6. They're 9.
And it did get renewed for a second season.
Right.
So,
yeah.
that will cover the events of the second game. I don't know how they're going to do that per se, but because it's a much larger game, it's probably I can beat the first game if I mainline it and play it on like easy or normal. I can probably beat it in like 10 or 12 hours. And the second game, I've only played it once because I needed to get some space from it before I tried to play it again, because it's even more dour and like depressing than the first one. It's a good 25, 30 hours. So I'm not sure how they're going to put that. I almost see them splitting season 2 or the second game into 2 seasons. I think that they could do that, but whether they do or not is up for debate. Anyway, before we kind of close this out, I just wanted to read, so we get the note, right? And it's Bill's note to Joel. And it's very sentimental. We are protectors. That's what we were put here to do in this situation. Save the people you can save, which is what Tess says to him or whatever. But, use whatever you can find and protect your family, protect those you love, that sort of thing. We are protectors. That's what we're here for. I never thought I went away. I liked what happened because everyone went away and left me alone. That sort of thing. Okay.
Yes.
So it was kind of hard. It was like a little bit heartfelt, but also like some of that trademark Bill sarcasm or what have you. But I want to read you Frank's note from the game. And again, this is spoilers for a 10-year-old game. So, and then just to get into that further in the game, in this section of the game, you're looking for, they've made the decision that they're going to try and find Tommy, Joel's brother. And so to do that, they need a vehicle. And at this point where the world's at, vehicles with batteries are very difficult to come for, or rather just batteries for these vehicles are very hard to come from, or very, very hard to come by. And so you have to navigate Bill's town, and they alluded to like his traps and stuff like that. And you have to kind of like make it through all of Bill's traps before you find Bill. And then he kind of takes you to this town, through the town to the high school. And I was really looking forward to this because it's a badass, like early boss fight kind of. And you're in this high school and you're kind of creeping through like the science rooms and stuff like that. There's clickers in there and you're trying to avoid them. And it's when this is in the game when you see the bloater for the first time, which is just a bigger version of the clicker. And it's stronger and it has like some different aspects. I'm interested to see how they handle that in the show. But this is where you see the bloater, and then they don't find a battery where they think they do, but they escape the school and kind of hide out in this house. And just by happenstance in that house is this blue truck, right? So it's like the same truck. But that is the house where Frank commits suicide. And what happens in the game is that Frank got bit trying to leave the town, and then he kills himself before he turns, and he leaves a suicide note. And so this is what the note says. And this shows the difference between the show and the game as far as what Bill and Frank's relationship was like. And there were some times in the show that they noted like some different struggles or stuff like that, but
yeah,
it never got tenuous like this. So it says, and then this is like a collectible you can find. Well, Bill, I doubt you'll ever find this note because you were too scared to ever make it to this part of town. But if for some reason you did, I want you to know I hated your guts. I grew tired of this shitty town and your set in your ways attitude. I wanted more from life than this, and you could never get that. And that stupid battery you kept moaning about, I got it, but I guess you were right. Trying to leave this town will kill me. Still better than spending another day with you. Good luck, Frank.
Holy shit. So instead of one last good day, it's get the fuck out of your day.
Yeah. Yeah. So they have somewhat of a irreconcilable.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, so that was funny, like the way that it ended, because that was the other thing. As the episode's going on, I keep waiting for Frank to just like get sick of him and go off like that. And I think the scope of the town in the game is a lot bigger because there's more neighborhoods and stuff like that. You really only see his house, his fence, and the gate, and then just kind of like the buildings around it. But in the game, it's a large town. So there's all that. And again, I'll be playing through that. Hopefully I'll have that out here in a couple days, but so you can check that out if you want to see those parts of the game. But overall, I thought this was another very good episode. Big change. And sometimes change is good and sometimes it's bad and sometimes it's additive. And sometimes I think people change just to change. And sometimes, we got to put this, force agendas with our woke ass liberal mindsets into our TV shows. That was one of the tweets I read. Somebody was like,
There's
"Oh,
nothing to do with that.
This episode sucks."
Oh my god!
Because people were forcing their woke liberal agendas into this show, and everybody tweeted. I was like, "What are you talking about?" He was gay in the game, and the guy was like, "Where? It's like, did you even play the game?" But I digress.
Sure.
Yeah, so we got to look at episode 4, there is another big change with episode 4, which is that in this portion of the game, it takes place in Pittsburgh, and they have changed that location to Kansas City, which is interesting because to make it from Boston to Kansas City, that's a pretty good drive. And so I always was under the impression that Pittsburgh felt right because that was kind of like a checkpoint. If you're driving from Boston to California or Wyoming, they're on their way to Wyoming. I don't know if that's actually been said in the game yet or in the show yet, but they're on their way to Wyoming. It would make sense that you would you're on I-80 and it's like, oh shit, we got to go into the city for supplies, that sort of thing, and kind of check things out. But yeah, the game in that part's super dope because you can see the bridges and they're really good throughout the game with making it accurate traffic signs, so you can see Fort Duquesne Tunnel and all that.
Do you go PNC Park and
no? I mean it's pretty linear, and I can't say for sure exactly certain streets. I will say that the hotel scene that was in the second episode is actually in that part of the game. It's not where they had it. So they did kind of some rearranging on that, but overall, so we're heading into that, and I remain excited every week. I can't wait. 9:00. I usually start 9:30 because that's the closest time I can. But there's no other show that I'm like this with. Any other show, even the ones that we like that I watch, it's I'll get to it when I get to it.
No, same here. It was football.
Yeah.
And it was, let's watch this show.
Right.
That's it.
Now we'll move on to a show that we don't really want to talk about. And that is Kaleidoscope.
We have to do it.
Yeah, we got to do it.
It's ad read time, though.
Oh, is it? We got to pay the bills?
It is.
Okay.
Kitchen countertops. You got to put yourself somewhere. Kitchen countertops. They'll be there before you were there in your house, and they're going to be there after you leave. Kitchen countertops. That is insane.